All right, hello and welcome back. Chase Down Block here on a Sunday night, a spinoff here on the Chase Down podcast where we, you guessed it, talk about the NBA. Here on this very program, we will not be discussing what happened earlier in the evening with a certain Atlanta franchise. Many are saying, as we're recording this, John Collins just missed another shot in said game, but we are not going to discuss that. Instead, my guest and I are going to talk about his team, who no Orlando Magic on this podcast either, beyond the arcade. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm good. Not as good as those Celtics, I guess, today, but you know, I'm doing all right. My Magic are looking up. That's what matters. My Magic are up, but we're not here to talk Magic. We're here to talk bounce around the league, a little playoff ball.
We do have a lot going on here. We're going to bounce around a lot of NBA here. The playoffs are in full swing. How are you organizing your day? Like, how are you organizing what you're watching? Are you doing full games? Are you taping some stuff and then going back through to parse through what you want to watch and just see some film that you want to study? How do you break it down?
Man, the playoffs, I got to watch as much live basketball as I possibly can. So over on the East Coast, it's a little tough to get some of these late tips. I mean, some of these 10 p.m. tips. I don't know what Adam Silver's thinking over there. So we got to catch some of these replays the next day. I'll watch the full game replay for some of them, like right when I wake up, basically right when I get up. You got to watch like the Sacramento versus the Warriors series, and Nuggets been beaten up on the T-Wolves late, so you know you got to catch up. But I do my best to stay up late and just watch the full game. But it depends. I try to get the experience probably as a fan, experience it live first, and then if I want to do more of a breakdown, break open the film the next day and look more into kind of the details of the plays and the action back and forth.
I like it. Are you a note taker? I'm a note taker with all my stuff, and I jot stuff down. Like, how do you do notes by hand? Do you do an iPad? What do you do note wise?
I got the Notes app. You know, it's a classic move. I'll just, especially if I'm just writing down some quick thoughts on the game, like, oh, I really like this player's burst on the random play in the third quarter. Let me make sure I note that. So I just keep the Notes app, keeping track of different games, and kind of depends on what mode I'm in. If I'm in a fan hat or an analyst hat, you know, depends. But try to really depends on the situation. But if we're breaking down the game action, you know, you gotta write down everything that pops out. It could be a player's, you know, individual attribute, or maybe the team defensive game plan and how that changes over the game. So a bunch of things to keep track of that way.
What was the biggest note you dropped today on the Notes app? What was your biggest one that you're excited about coming back to? What's the biggest note you've made
for today's games? The Warriors Kings was just an epic game. I mean, I think Draymond's performance was probably the biggest note I have. It's like his clutch defense in the last few minutes. He got a steal and a block on Sabonis. He was forcing stops as a one-man defender, shutting down the Kings. That kind of looked a little deer in the headlights-y, little first time there in the first time in the big dance type of feeling for them. So that was probably the big takeaway was you know, Steph hitting his shots like he's supposed to. Their clutch stop on Fox on the last play, they decide to basically not full on double, but Steph cut him off, and Draymond was there right away to stunt at him and force the kick out and make somebody else beat him. And that was what Draymond touched on after as well. So that was the big thought. But I mean, just an epic game. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is just out of this world right now, just basically matching Steph Curry, just insane shot after insane shot. He had 38 points that first game, and I want to say he had 38 points again, at least this last game in Game 4, and he's hitting these like left-right crossover pull-ups, the hezzies, and we would say they're the most epic tough shots of the playoffs if Steph wasn't coming back down and just hitting like step backs right just to answer any shot you can think of. So it's been definitely an epic series. keep watching this one. I'm excited to keep looking into this one.
Do you think?
Oh, sorry.
Well, no. Do you think Draymond should continue to come off the bench? Did that add a different dimension that you liked for them?
Yes and no. Like it's obviously working for them in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that they won the last 2 games, but I don't think it's their best version of them, even if it has worked. Like I don't necessarily think he's like I think they value his playmaking, especially in his decision making with the handoffs offensively, and they almost missed that creation a little bit. There were a lot of early turnovers with the Moses Kuminga lineup, and I'm not necessarily sure that's all on them. Steph definitely had a bunch of kind of bonehead plays with the timeout thing and just classic Warriors kind of weird turnovers that like uh, can be thrown like grade school level turnovers or something. But um, they probably miss Draymond's playmaking in that sense there, and then obviously he is a defensive anchor. So in that sense, I think he should probably get back to the starting lineup here soon. But they won 2 straight, even if this one was close. So they're probably going to ride with what keeps working and make it a slow return. But it's basically like the battle of inverted handoffs with these big men, where Sabonis actually leads the league in 3-point assists, and Draymond is, I want to say, sixth, or
Mm-hmm.
they were both around top 5 about a month ago, right as the season was ending. And the Kings are obviously in the top, ranked number 1 in the league, and like everything offensively from 3-point shooting to pace to scoring, and a lot of that is the threes that are being created off these handoffs with Sabonis. So that's an interesting element with against Draymond, and the threes being created off there, and see how that matches up. So far, it seems like Draymond's winning that matchup where he's shutting down Sabonis individually, and every time he comes in, they're both still creating those threes, but Draymond's definitely been there before, and it looks like he's bringing that impact once again.
Do you think the Warriors win the series now?
Man, that was, I mean, yeah. After that kind of that's kind of like a swing game to me
Mm-hmm.
right there. I mean, obviously where it would have been 3-1, Kings going up 3-1, and they had home court to begin with, so that would have been just a much easier route to pull off the victory. And they had so many chances there. I mean, the Warriors were begging them to steal it from them almost at the very end, because the Kings just couldn't totally pull it out. But I mean, Fox came Fox came real close. He was super impressive once again, and we gotta just appreciate how close, how much fight they have for this team. I mean, I think I looked at the stat that they had their first playoff win since the year Twitter was first existed in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time the Kings have won since then. So,
It feels
you
longer,
know,
honestly.
right. It feels like forever, like of my lifetime, like it feels like since Tris Weber, basically since those teams. And that's really what it is.
The
And
way I look at it too, like Tom Ziller, who's a great Kings writer,
mhm.
he did a really good piece for the Kings Herald, which is kind of like a spinoff from the Sacktown Royalty guys. And like, I don't know, how old are you? Okay,
Just hit the big 3-0. Put me on the
okay.
spot here,
I just
Feel
turned
so
32.
old.
I
Oh
just
yeah,
turned
there you
32
go.
last
Yeah.
week. When's your birthday?
Happy birthday. About 2 months ago.
Okay, well,
A
mine was
couple months
last
ago.
week. All right, I thought we were gonna be close birthdays. It was I don't know when you no longer just turned something, but I think 2 months feels a little
Oh
bit
yeah,
like.
you're right. You're very right about that. I turned 30, so it's like a big year for me. It feels like it just happened.
Here's what I'll tell you though. 30's
Yeah,
good. 30's are
yeah,
good. I would take my 30's over my 20's any day of the week. 30's are good, man.
that's good to
Like,
hear.
because people, when you're like doing this, like what we're doing, where we're just hanging around watching basketball, like I'm also watching Tennessee baseball and stuff, but people don't expect anything less. Like they're like, yeah, he's in his 30's now. Like we're not inviting him to go do some crazy. Like you don't have to go out. You can just live your best life, because younger people think 30's old when 30's not actually that old. It's just what you can do the things that you wanted to do in your 20's, but you felt obligated, that you're like, I'm in my 20's. I'm going to get dragged out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. No, when you're in your 30's, you are in your own world. People are just like, he's entered a different era. Like some people look at you as like you're retired, and it's just, no, but it's awesome. As someone who's always had an old person personality, I mean, I have Ben Matlock above me right now. Like that's just that it sits with me, and it feels like it might sit with you. So embrace your 30s. 30s are good.
All right, just hitting your old man stride. Just
Yes.
feels like it's all finally coming into place there, matching up with your goals in life.
I
Finally
just want to read,
matching up
sit by the
nice.
sit in a
It's a
park,
relaxing
watch
time.
sports. Yeah, like I'm
Walk
good.
around the lake,
Yes.
fight the ducks. They
Yes.
always want to fight. You gotta
They
watch
do.
out for
They're
those
not nice.
ducks.
No. Well, ducks aren't bad. You're thinking of geese.
Oh yeah,
Geese want smoke.
yeah.
Geese are very
Any of
protective
those
and
lake birds.
territorial. Ducks are fine. Ducks are hanging out. They're just doing their thing.
That's
But
fair.
that's just Knoxville and Atlanta. I can't speak to what they're like down there in Florida. I don't know if they're a different kind of duck.
You be careful. Those Lake Eola and any of those birds near Lake Eola are ready to throw
Have you
down
seen an
at
alligator
any
up
time.
close?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
that's a classic. I mean, welcome to Florida. You can't go to a
But
lake
you've actually like
without
walked up on
seeing
one. Like,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we got mini golf too with what's it called, Congo River. We got alligators hanging out with the mini golf. You can just go feed them. Like it's a whole thing.
Like
You
just
know, they
part of
just
the mini golf experience. You're like hit
yeah,
a putt hole 13 and also pet the alligator.
walk by the gators, feed them a little fish. Welcome to Florida.
I didn't know there was a thing. That's awesome. I
Beautiful.
went to the alligator farm once in Jacksonville, maybe. I don't know. It had an
Okay.
albino alligator, which is pretty trippy.
Oh man,
But yeah,
sounds
alligator
cool.
farms are pretty wild. I'm pro gator. Gators are cool. Not the Florida gators of that
Yeah,
variety. Very
we
uncool.
we don't like them
No, we don't like them.
around here.
The biggest series surprise for you this week, based on how the series is right now, whether that's like the Sixers who swept, whether that's the Celtics who just went up 3-1 on the Hawks, whether that's the Nuggets sweeping the Timberwolves, like what coming into the playoffs did you have this idea of how it was going to go and then it went a totally different way? Which was the biggest example of this?
It's gotta be these Knicks, Bing Bong
Mm,
over here in New York. I mean, I had the Cavs winning the series, and they're down 3-1 after today. And earlier today, I mean, they stole home court before today even started. And I mean, it seems like the concerns about the Cavs' depth are coming into play a little bit, where the core four are playing relatively well in terms of their impact. They're +6 net rating in 100 minutes through 4 games with Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Donovan Mitchell. But the problem seems to be so far maybe either lack of depth or lack of playmaking once they kind of trap those guards. We're seeing Mitchell force a lot and not necessarily hit the tough shots. And Garland's been on fire, but when they trapped him, then there just hasn't been as much creation elsewhere. And on the other end, we're seeing Jalen Brunson just go off, and when they trap him, the Knicks are able to make him play and make him pay. Like R.J. Barrett attacking closeouts, getting to the rack, and you know if Brunson, we saw a lot of empty side pick and rolls where Brunson was blitzed and he would be able to kick around this game, and they just kept taking advantage. The Knicks did today on that, and you know Brunson's just been the best player, the best guard. He's putting up 24 points a game, efficient 5-2 assists to turnover. And the other big difference so far this series I didn't necessarily expect is the rebounding. Like the bigs for the
mm.
Cavs are just getting manhandled, and you would think they're a top 3 defense. That's Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Like they might be a little slim, but like they're strong defenders, but they're just getting beaten on the boards. The Knicks are averaging 6 more rebounds a game. They got Julius Randle, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Mitchell Robinson down there, and they're just outworking them. Whatever that grit is in New York is working because they're just outworking them right now, and it shows. I mean, they're up 3-1, looking good, and I'm not sure what the Cavs' last move is. They tried putting LeVert in the starting lineup. That didn't. That's probably their best 5 players. Maybe they have a better defender somewhere in a better role, but they're just trying to get the best talent out there, and they just might not have that full rotation to pull it off. But at the same time, I mean, they came back in the third quarter today. They're in the game. I think they have a couple of the best top players. Like if Brunson's the best player, then the next 3 or 4 best players might be the Cavs. on the Cavs, but I mean Randall's obviously great too. But so far this series, they've been good. So I think the talent's close, and I thought the Cavs' talent and the defense and offense being top 12 rated are all really good signs for a playoff team. But that depth, defense, chemistry type of element just might be coming into play, and that might be the big difference of why they fall out early.
They're a Giannis lingering injury away from being an Eastern Conference Final shoe-in, which is pretty insane. Because like if the Heat get through with Tyler Hero being out, now Victor Oladipo being out, like they're not getting through that Knicks series if they get Knicks Heat in round 2, and they get through it because Giannis is out. That's insane territory we're talking about here. The Knicks making that, and then we get potentially Knicks Celtics. Sixers, but again, another injury type situation. We'll see what happens with Embiid's knee sprain and what that looks like going into round 2. But like, I don't know. It's weird to see this much optimism and just see the kind of path the Knicks are kind of on. They're in a really, really good spot. Two teams that I don't think are in great spots, but I think you can climb out. And one of them is the Bucks, the 2 seed. The other one is the Grizzlies. I think a lot of people are having fun with this, right? Like we don't see this in the NBA. Like this many, just the Cavs, the Bucks, the Grizzlies, just different teams in the top half of the conference being on the ropes early in a first round series. The Grizzlies was a mess, right? The first quarter is going to haunt basketball fans like myself for a long time. That was rough. One of the worst quarters of basketball I've seen in a really long time.
35-9.
I mean, 9 points in today's NBA is just, it's pretty preposterous.
It's that single digit that really just drives home how sad it is. Like if it was 35-10, it wouldn't be as embarrassing. But
I don't know, 9. I mean, 10. That's still like in today's NBA, like you almost have to try. Like it's one of those where it's like it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. And for me, I don't think either are in all that much danger. Like it's all the talking about. I guarantee tomorrow on all the talk shows, it's going to be like Lakers are getting ready they smell blood in the water. The Lakers are coming. I'm like, the Grizz are pretty bad. They couldn't play any worse. They fought back really hard in the second half. Like Ja went on that crazy heater. They're really banged up. They could really use Steven Adams in the series. Like this is the series that you would need. Like Jaren Jackson's good, but like the bodies, he's in foul trouble. You don't have really any, like Almada is just a guy who would prefer to be on the perimeter. They don't really have Tillman's just like you saw this like you've already seen like the best of Tillman at home. And then it's just, he's going to disappear for the next 5 games. So like Brandon Clark out for the year, like they're banged up. All that being said, I think Ja kind of turned the corner and found himself a little bit with his hand and everything else. I don't think they're going to play that poorly again. And then if you win game 4 in LA, which I think they will, then you just have to win 2 or 3 at home. And we've seen they're a totally different team at home than at the road. And I'm not hitting the panic button. Now, if they lose game 4, then I'm like, yeah, they're probably losing the series. And then there's all kinds of issues. I'm not there. And then the Bucks, I'm like, it just takes Giannis playing. Like it's just, we love to do this. And I don't want to like poo-poo like upset city. And like, they're trying to turn this into March Madness a little bit, I think. I'm like, I don't know. I think everybody's going to make it through. It's a long series. Adjustments happen. And I'll believe when I see it, because we were here a couple years ago with the Lakers and the Suns and it didn't happen. And part of it was injuries, but it's also like, that's also a part of this. Like it could happen. Like we don't know what's going to happen. The point is a lot can happen in a series, and when a lot can happen and you could still parse through it, I'm not panicking. I think the Grizzlies and Bucks still make it through. Are you in the same boat, or do you think the Lakers really do have a lot of the momentum and they've shown you enough that you believe they're the better team in the series and they'll just flat out win?
Of the 2 teams, I'd say the Lakers probably. I probably believe a little more in the Lakers than the Heat pulling off this upset of those 2 teams at this point. But for all the reasons you just mentioned, where the Grizzlies are kind of facing a multiple different issues with the injuries before getting into Ja, and Ja seemed to look fine. I think it was 22 straight in that fourth quarter. I mean, that was the moment where it's like, all right, maybe they can get through all of these problems. So what I also think it kind of comes down to there is the Lakers hitting their stride, where after that Westbrook trade, they got all their shooters finally, and they got Anthony Davis basically looking like his peak self and allowing LeBron to be a little more of a secondary playmaker and run the show as a drive and kick with all these extra shooters. So for in terms of just picking one, I'd probably pick the Lakers as the more likely upset. And also, you mentioned, the Bucks are really good with Giannis, and obviously contenders with Giannis, and still really good without him. Like they have a top defense with arguably two defensive player of the year candidates, Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez, in addition to Giannis being another defensive player of the year candidate, and Middleton being a strong scorer. So they have kind of that pre-built chemistry of being a championship team, having the same system, offense, coach, defense, drop system for years now, where I definitely have more faith in them kind of getting by without Giannis and withstanding maybe like a hot shooting Heat game once or twice, where the Heat really need to, and obviously they need Hero back too, and that's a big one, big loss. But um, the Heat really need like a perfect shooting game to have a good chance. I feel like, just to be a fighting chance. So that one feels a little more one sided at this point. But the Heat just won. They did it. I mean, they hit their threes, and Giannis has been out. So I feel like the Bucks feel safer. Like they seem to be keeping Giannis out to see if they can pull out one more win without him, get a little more rest, and it didn't happen. So now they back to, it almost doesn't even seem like they're fully taking the series totally seriously yet, because you don't see Giannis playing 40 minutes a game with a broken back like he did in the finals. Like we just saw him go all out. So those are some reasons there, but
you also can't go down 3-1 against Miami. Like you can't do
it.
it.
Yeah, I mean you're not wrong. That's very hard to overcome.
Nobody wants this, by the way. Can you imagine Miami doing what they did in the bubble, but just with less offensive firepower? Like,
man, just grit and grind.
Just grit and grind, making it as ugly as possible, and they somehow make it to the finals. Can you imagine like this version of the Heat without Hero, without Oladipo, with Jimmy Butler and Bam just winning games 98 to 74?
It's just tough to believe, like you just mentioned. It's just tough to believe them like getting enough offense.
But they've done it.
That crew, and
We've seen it.
They're pulling it out, and to be fair, like I think it was Tom Basine made the visual that showed they have the top offense in the playoffs so far. Where
oh my god, it's happening, isn't it? It's happening.
They're losing a player every game, and R.I.P. Oladipo. By the way, I mean,
yeah,
geez, I'm so sad about where that career trajectory has gone from all NBA upwards. He was you can't hit a better mark than the youngest guard to hit all D and all NBA in the same season, at like where he and Jimmy Butler were like the only guards other than like Michael Jordan, Chris Paul, to reach that level. And it's just so sad to see
that series against
hitting these
Cleveland with LeBron was just
toe to toe game.
You thought it was his coming out party, and it just
right. He was Ola, baby, Ola, the GOAT. But
man,
hopefully a full fast recovery for him. Wish nothing but the best there. But yeah, with the back to the Heat series, of course. But we're just hoping he can get back soon, and we'll see how they hold up. I mean, it's just a surprise that they're hitting their threes so far. That's really where I'm at, because I mean, Duncan Robinson has been really bad for a while, and now he's playing a little better.
He just doesn't even play. Like throughout the year, he was just DNP CDs for like 2/3. Maybe they were waiting on this. They were just waiting to unleash Duncan back out. Like he's just ready. Playoff Duncan.
And then Strus, almost similar, like was just out for a while or just not hitting, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's back to having a big game. So I guess like it feels like if I were a betting man, the odds of the Heat hitting their threes and the Bucks not, like Giannis not returning, like those odds don't seem to be favoring the Heat too great. Like I still feel relatively safer there about Milwaukee. But you mentioned Jared Jackson Jr. I mean, even if Ja's out, he could still be the best player in a game, any game in that series. I mean, he's officially the defensive player of the year. Hyped for him there. And that's got to be, something of a little bit of a incentive for the matchup there against Anthony Davis. I'm sure there's a little bit of, just one unicorn facing the other and trying to fight for that title of best defender in the league and who's the real unicorn and all that. So you would think that matchup really defines the series, whether Ja ends up playing the rest of it or not. But I think they obviously need him, especially with the depleted injuries. And I think that one might be a little closer now because of all of the things we've mentioned so far.
That's fair. I'll say though, I will be more surprised the Lakers win the series than the Heat. Yeah. I will say that.
Okay. All right.
I would be more surprised. Are we sure the Nuggets aren't just going to coast the NBA Finals? Like, I think so many people have turned on them where it's like they don't want to give. Like, I just look at this and I said before the year, my NBA Finals prediction was Nuggets, Bucks. Still feel okay. Like I said, I just said that I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat won this series, but that's Giannis health permitted. Like we'll see. And the Heat have been this kind of pesky team. Like we've seen it before. We haven't seen with this iteration Lakers, honestly, since the bubble. But also just older dudes. And it's different. It's different with Jimmy and Bam than it is for AD and LeBron for me. But I just like they get a sweep against a hurt, dysfunctional Minnesota team. But they took care of business. There are other teams around the league that people want to buy into more right now. And Denver didn't really play with their food. They just took care of business. They've been the best team in the West all year long. I feel like people just don't want to do it because they haven't seen it yet. But I'm like, I think they're just going to coast. Like everyone's into the Lakers, into the Warriors, into the Suns. But I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Nuggets are just deeper than everybody. Jamal Murray looks back to his old self. Health permitting, I don't think they're going to have a problem. Maybe I'll eat these words, but I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing. And I understand it's the Timberwolves, but like they're just clicking on all cylinders. And I understand there's some defensive questions, but the West just isn't what it's been. And I think the Nuggets are just in their own kind of tier. I'm not nervous. I think they coast. Am I crazy?
I'm with you. I got to agree with you on this, honestly. I'm not going to, there's no first take going on this segment. Like,
okay.
The Nuggets are the best, like you said, the best team in the West all year. To me, they have the biggest advantage of chemistry, or as big as anyone. I mean, we finally have this core four that teased us with that 2-week period after the trade where they looked like this unguardable offense, and then Jamal got hurt and we had to miss out on them for what felt like 2 years. And now here they are, they're all healthy and they look just as unguardable as before. And anytime you get basically that inverted pick and roll or a Spain pick and roll where you have a back screen for Jokic to pop out and Porter or Jamal running through, and then it just rolls right into the next pick and roll with Jokic running on the ball, running a pick and roll with Gordon rolling to the rim. It's just it just feels unguardable because at the moment you send a second defender to Jokic, that's over. I mean, you're getting an open layup for Gordon at the rim, or an open three for catch and shoot for Porter, or of course Jamal or Porter scoring themselves. So you have that top four, as talented a group as there is, and shout out to Milwaukee and Golden State and Philly, because those are some other strong chemistry, talent, depth teams that probably have a similar advantage. But the chemistry part can't be underrated here, because it just rolls right into how comfortable teams are in the biggest moments doing the same thing, getting those reps in playoff situations. And I think the other big element and what separates them from maybe like the Cavs, like we were talking before, is that they finally have some good depth filling their roles really well. Like the trade of Monte Morris for KCP was really kind of a big trade, because in my opinion, Morris is a slightly better player in a vacuum. He's a better playmaker, decision maker, reliable backup point guard. But KCP just fits that lineup, the starting lineup, perfectly with his D&3 needs, like, such an offensive, skilled lineup that just needs a defender that can hit the catch and shoot three and guard point of attack defense. And boom, you found them in that lineup with KCP with the core four is plus 13 net rating in 700 minutes together this season. They're crushing it. So that was a win of a trade. And you get Ish Smith in the deal, who's just a fan favorite, locker room, fun guy, pushing the pace. He's been around the league for at least a decade, just
I wonder how many teams he's been on
running
totally.
second
I feel like
units.
he's got to be pushing half the league now, right?
I was gonna guess double digit, but I didn't want to do that to him. But
It's
it
gotta
felt
be
like
double digits.
it felt like it.
Yeah.
But gotta love where his, and obviously as the playoffs go on, the team might prefer to play better defenders or two-way players that aren't going to get beat. So maybe he loses a few minutes to someone like Christian Brown, who is earning minutes with hustle, two-way play, some mean dunks he's throwing down. And Bruce Brown is as well from the Nets. He hasn't been quite the same player as getting those wide open layups off Kyrie and KD over in Brooklyn, but he's coming back to his own the last few playoff games, and just another defender who can make the right play. And then it's filling the rotation with these basically two-way team first players that you want to be able to plug and play into the lineup with these other offensive stars. And Jeff Green's another example of that, another immortal Jeff Green. He just still
played a
hasn't
lot of
lost a
playoff
step.
games, won a title.
Oh yeah, still throwing. He's good for a dunk a week.
Yeah,
bringing that plus defense on the wing, and still a little bit of streaky scoring and 3-point shooting. So I mean, he can plug and play pretty much any lineup there, and I think that depth and chemistry has just been huge for them, and kind of is what makes them the favorite, even though, like you said, we haven't technically seen them do it yet. And that is the big holdout for sports fans is, if you haven't seen them win it all, then there's just no faith from
but like
from
you
the
said, it's
sports
the death
fans.
lineup. Like those five,
Right.
if they're healthy this whole run, they're making the finals. I think it's more fun to be like, oh, Kevin Durant, LeBron, like all these different shiny objects around, and I'm like, the Nuggets have been like, I don't
Right,
understand it.
and
Like,
that's the other thing is all those other stars don't have the chemistry this
yeah,
year. Like the LeBron Lakers are a whole new team. Kevin Durant has played like 6 total games before the playoffs with the Suns, I think, out of the 20 possible, something like that. So, like, obviously the talent's there, but,
I mean, Torrey
you
Craig
still
is
gotta
their
play
fifth guy
together
right
a little
now.
bit.
Like, are they
And
gonna
yeah,
go
he's a
Torrey
good
Craig in
defender,
this
but
series?
that's, could be tough. It could be
Michael
tough
Malone knows
for the
Torrey Craig.
offense, but yeah,
He
he
was a
does.
Denver guy. Like I don't think you can do that. They'll be going 4-on-5. Like I don't think you're going to be able to survive that way against Denver.
Yeah, it's tough. If you have a hole on either end in the playoffs, someone will take advantage of it. And Torrey
The Knicks are
Craig's
doing
a
that right
heck
now
of
to the
an effort
Cavs.
defender.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're doing, right? The Cavs can't find a fifth player, it seems like, to put out there.
We got to call that the Clippers rule, the Clipper problem, like the 2012-13 Clippers, where it's like
Oh yeah,
they always had 4. They always
oh
had
yeah.
Blake, DJ, JJ, and CP. They
I
just
just
Matt
could never
Barnes,
find that
Lance
fifth. I think
Stevenson.
Jeff Green was there once.
Yes, they
He was
kept
in there.
trying, and they never figured out the fifth. And that was the difference maybe between them winning a title, was just not having that full complement of guys, never
Right.
having the right pieces at the right time.
And Doc was GM, and there was
Yeah.
always a little bit of a joke that someone would beat the Clippers pretty bad one week and get traded there 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
And he still wouldn't be the problem, but they just never figured it out. But those Kings were good, or those Clipper teams were good.
They were a lot of fun, man. Blake was my dude. Prime Blake was a lot
Oh
of fun.
man, Oklahoma just
Love
climbing
Prime
people
Blake.
for dunks.
Yeah. Do you think it was the right move for the Raps to fire Nick Nurse? And do they just need like a new voice? Or should they seriously consider recalibrating all the way this offseason? Whether that means moving on from at least Fred VanVleet, entertaining, finally pulling the trigger on OG Anunoby, who feels like he's been in trade rumors for 2.5 years now. Like, how would you go about it? And were you surprised by Nick Nurse moving on and getting really fired by the Raptors?
Right, that was a bit of a surprise. At least the terminology that was used a little harsher than you would normally see for parting ways, especially for a champion coach there and all that. But From the outside looking in, it just seems like he kind of lost the voice in the locker room, like you said, that where maybe a new voice, a little more modern motivation, optimistic type of voice to bring in might be the move, or just maybe just a change for the sake of change. I mean, sometimes a roster might not be perfectly constructed to compete, and if the coach can't take advantage of that roster and maximize it, then somebody's got to go, and usually it's the coach. But I think the front court of the roster is obviously loaded and very set for the future. And Siakam and Scotty and maybe even Precious seem to be guys that they're building around. And obviously, OG is good enough to be part of that front court if they want him there. But it does seem like he is some either wants out, or there seems to be a lot of smoke there for him moving on. And like you said, FVP as well. I mean, I'm a big believer in Scotty, so I'd love to see like maybe like unleashing him in more of a point guard role, him and Siakam initiating half court offense, and kind of like maybe you saw Jason Kidd do with Giannis early on, where you just hand Scotty the ball, run off turnovers, initiate offense, be our point guard, and just try to find some good basketball players who can fill out the lineups, spread the floor, attack closeouts around them. And in theory, Fred VanVleet is that type of player. So, I don't necessarily think the talent is that on the roster is bad, but maybe just a couple misfitting pieces here. Maybe they need a more traditional point guard who can just play make and create some of these half court looks for everyone. And it was too much of what I just said before. And maybe that's the problem. So, I mean, trying either one or going all in, or at least, building the roster to have the options for both, and finding a coach that wants to align themselves with the best player and the GM for whatever that vision is obviously important.
Yeah, I think they're just fighting the inevitable. Like when you were talking about like getting the most out of this group, I'm like, I'm not sure you'll find a coach who gets the most out of a limited roster. Like Nick Nurse is the only coach around the league. I love. I'm gonna miss the Toronto Raptors box scores in the morning when I'm going through it. I'm like 48 minutes of blank, 43 minutes of blank, 42 minutes of like no other coach was doing this in the regular season. Like it's only him. He's the only guy playing a playoff rotation throughout the entire regular season. So it's like I kind of wonder what their record would be like if he was being more cautious and was giving more minutes to Malachi Flynn and giving more minutes to Boucher or whoever. Like, I mean, he really did maximize this group. And like you said, he did win a title with this group. He can coach. He'll get on with somebody else really quickly. But you saw Houston pop up. Like, if I'm him, I'm staying away. Like, Houston's like the number one job I'm staying away from. Like, I have no interest in what's going on there. And until they're committed to just not a bunch of young guys, and you read the stuff about the culture and it just seems bad. Like, it all seems bad. I would stay away from that one. But he'll have his opportunities. But you also have to wonder about like what Masai does. Like, does Masai look at this where I'm like, I got my title here. Maybe like the Washington thing already came up. Do you go somewhere else where you're like, this is kind of running its course? I don't know what else I can do here. Like, yeah, I like Scotty Barnes. I like Pascal Siakam, but like, how do we actually get up here? And then it's also just kind of weird they didn't trade Fred VanVleet at the deadline. Like that was one I just do it. Like that you're not like even if you make the plan, like what are we fighting for here? Like he's going to be gone after this year. Why would you not move Fred VanVleet at the deadline? I think that was a huge mess up on their part.
And they
a rare
almost
one.
Went the opposite direction with the Podol deal. I mean, he brought in Jacob Podol to shore up the front line, almost to make a stronger push for either this season or to just reassure that front court. And yeah, it's definitely a weird one would call it a mismanagement of assets if a player just walks away for nothing. And
which I think is what he's going to do, right?
How it goes sometimes. And it looks like, I mean, the Magic are a rumored
Well, I was
team.
about to ask you. This is where the Magic come in, okay? This is where the Magic enter the fold.
We could have made an offer to trade for him, but people were even saying there why trade anyone now if you can just sign them in the summer?
Okay, but let's say they do, right? Let's say that's their big summer signing. The Orlando Magic bring in Fred VanVleet. I don't know who sticks because you're already running into the problem of like Jalen Suggs is coming off the bench. Like I was one of those sickos this year watching Jazz Magic early before work this season. So I don't know if you remember, like the Taylor Horton-Tucker was the lead guard, and Walker Kessler was beast in the boards, but Paolo, a lot of fun. Like the way he would attack and get to the line was just special as a rookie. It was just one of those things where I would tell people, I'm like, he's just so fearless. Like the dude is just, he plays so polished offensively. Like he's a really polished player. And then Wagner is just so much fun passing, and he'll find these crazy passes that just should not work, and they do. And it was a fun game. Markelle plays at his own style. He lives in his own world. Like he's just the classic. He's doing his own thing out there, and it's slow. It works, but he's living in his own world. All that to say, I don't know, because Gary Harris became one of the league's best 3-point shooters. Like he has to be a part of this, I think, a little bit, because he is so important to your spacing, because it's not like you're littered with shooters right now in Orlando. And then you have Cole Anthony, who's just a bucket and really become like, he's one of those dudes who you would assume's like 37, the way he plays and the way he understands his role. But he's really just been in the league a couple of years and has already found, he's like, I'm not going to be a league guard. I'm not going to be a Kyrie Irving. I'm not going to be a max player. I'm going to stick in this league for 18 years being Anthony Carter, Chucky Atkins. That's what I'm going to be. And that's fine.
Good. Yeah.
But
good if he wanted.
You just, like, Jalen Suggs just feels like such an important lottery piece that you still have to figure out. But if you side Fred VanVleet, Jalen has to come off the bench for all of next year. Like, I just don't see a path to him getting the opportunity. So, like, would Jalen have to be out? Like, would you have to be saying, Jalen, we whiffed. We are not going to be able to just develop it? Because I don't see the room in the roster if you sign Fred VanVleet. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, someone might have to be, in theory, go if you
That's
bring
a crowded
Fred
room,
VanVleet
man.
in. That's just a lot of guards for sure. I think of it like from a roster building, like working your way in. Like if you have Franz and Paulo there, you're trying to think what kind of guards fit with those forwards, where you have kind of the creation in the front court. You want someone who
Gary
can
Harris.
probably spread. Yeah, Gary Harris fits really well. I mean,
what did he finish? Like 40% from three? 40? It was
at
higher?
least.
Yeah.
At least, yeah. I have it here somewhere actually, but he was on fire. I actually have Paulo's free throw numbers in front of me. I'm writing about the Magic season, and he had just a historic free throw rate. He was tied with Zion for 19th all time in free throw attempts as a
That's
rookie.
not surprising when you watch them. Like it was one of the most under talked about. You had to watch the Magic. It's like, this dude's unbelievable at getting the line, and it was real contact, and it was him initiating offense. It wasn't like he was getting cuts and just getting. No, he was initiating.
He's too
and drawing
big for the smaller guys and too fast for the big guys. And like Zion, like just this walking mismatch where he's drawing fouls in transition as a killer. He's drawing fouls in ISO, running pick and roll, like just effortlessly. And it's legit when a rookie who has no respect from refs and they have no choice but to say, oh yeah, obviously he just fouled him because that's the only option, because it's like a tank out there, like Barkley or Shaq running down the lane, like, and the only hope is to throw him off, make him hit free throws. But the big difference between him and like Shaq there is he's also 74% free throw shooter. So he's getting to the line 7.5 times a game and hitting 74%. That's like an efficient rate that's right up there with like LeBron and right next to Zion there and other great players. So in terms of the free throws, that's huge. But back to Fred VanVleet, I think that he does fill that kind of a secondary scorer need where he can play off these forwards, off their driving kicks. And also in theory, he's one of the rare guards that should fit next to Fultz too, because it's kind of a weird fit where
I also didn't even say Fultz in all of that. I just left Fultz out, and
he's just dancing, throwing shoulder fakes out there. But I think Fultz has done enough to prove he is a part of this core unit, and like the team moves with his pace, with at his pace, and it's just a weird fit because Paulo and Fultz are like these driving forces that aren't necessarily knockdown 3-point shooters yet. And if Paulo is the clear guy, then it's tough to have two guys that aren't necessarily knockdown three-point shooters on the floor. And then Wendell's bookending the lineup as well. And he's finally more willing to let it fly, but it just starts getting a little bit clunky. So you really need a sniper if you're going to start those guys. And that's where Fred VanVleet would come in, because off and on the ball, and he can score. He can shoot the ball from deep, off the dribble, on the dribble, and he can defend ones and twos next to Fultz and kind of switch back and forth. So in theory, he's kind of bringing a little bit of the best of both worlds from what Cole and Suggs, kind of what you're hoping for. Like, you out of there, you want that combo guard that can do a little bit of everything, be a positive defender, score and shoot. And so I would think those are probably the players that kind of get either squeezed out of the rotation, or you just kind of move on from other veterans and keep the prospects around in case of injuries, and hope that development takes place. But I would think if the Magic pursued Fred VanVleet, then Suggs and Cole, like you said, probably lose a little bit of opportunity in that sense. So that's kind of a big decision, is if either you give up on the prospect completely and just you spend your free agency allotment salary on someone that fits this roster, and you keep building and just kind of take it as a sunk cost in a sense and move on, or you still can use the money and just try to keep everybody happy, but it's just tough if there's not enough minutes, like we talked about before. So I mean, do you keep Gary Harris? Do you keep Jalen Suggs and Cole and hope that maybe the development comes down the line? I mean, I would probably want to keep the prospects and edge out some other veterans, but
Someone's
Gary's
gonna have to
been
go.
really good.
So let's do
Someone's
it.
got to be good.
Who goes? I'll ask you the hard question. Who
Ooh.
goes in this scenario if Fred VanVleet signs? Is it one, or could it be even two odd men out here?
It might, yeah. I mean, it's tough. I feel like it's got to be Cole or Suggs because of the roles that they play. Like you're basically it's almost overkill to have one or the other. But
And you have what? Don't you have two lottery picks?
So yeah, the Magic have their own lottery pick, and the Bulls lottery pick, top 4 protected this year. So
That'll
about a
probably convey.
90% chance
Yeah.
of the Bulls pick conveying, I think. So
And
that's
one of
nice.
those could be a guard. And then you're just adding to another.
Easy. I mean, the Magic could easily be looking at like Scoot Henderson or
Yep.
Amen Asar Thompson next year, or
someone's out. I don't know who it
yeah.
is, but someone's out of this group. At least one.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the same time, putting on the other perspective, they did not make the trade. They had the option. It seems like at the deadline the rumors were they were going to give up Suggs and bring back Fred VanVleet, and that didn't happen. So maybe they think they can get VanVleet in free agency and still keep most of the backcourt here. And injury wise, there's always someone hurt anyway, so it doesn't not necessarily like a clear career ender for anyone here. It could just be we got a big free agent and fight for your spots, and whoever is the odd man out, someone's going to end up out. And also, we always end up with injuries anyway. So like Cole ended up starting for the first 30 games before Fultz was back, or 20 games or whatever it was, and stuff like that. So there's a couple different ways to play it where also all these players are on rookie salary deals. So the time to strike on a free agency acquisition is this year, is next year, before the big extensions come for Paulo and Franz. And while thankfully pretty much all the other young veterans like Isaac, Fultz, Wendell are all on very team friendly deals that are about the salary of a 6-man, where they're all about 15 million.
Isaac, is that a basketball player, or is that still a
figment of my imagination?
I was gonna say I don't recall. I feel there was some memory of an Isaac at some point in Orlando.
The greatest defender we've ever seen for a couple games, right? Maybe.
Yeah,
I think
he was going to be the next Draymond.
Oh man, he's such a good defender. Get well soon, Isaac. We need him back. We need everybody back. No more injuries. Turn off these injuries.
3
I was
years.
looking at the Cerebro impact. He has a perfect 100 rating for defense from his short stint this year. It's just so nice to. It's a what if. It's a fun what if too. I mean, imagine that
But how does he
defensive anchor.
Who is he taking? Whose role is he taking with Franz and Paolo on the floor in every closing lineup? Like, I don't know how he fits.
I honestly, that's what I was just getting at. I feel like he's a small ball five now for this type of team. Like a Jet, like if he could shoot, he would be playing more of like a Jaren Jackson type of role, and maybe without the shot, maybe more of like a Draymond or a Bam type, Adebayo type of role, where it's handoffs and a little bit of mid-range game offensively, but otherwise it's defensive anchor, shutting down passing lanes, just the one-man wrecking crew who can protect the rim and switch on anyone, and where you run like Franz, Paulo, and Isaac as the dynamic small front court, and that does, maybe Wendell brings more of a consistent two-way option there, while Isaac is more of whenever he's healthy. Hopefully, we get something of the like. To me, he's one of the most dynamic defenders I've ever seen. But obviously, this is only when he plays, and it's been a while, and we got a little bit of a stint back. I'm glad he got some games in this season before going down again, but we'll see. But man, anyway, the point there was their salary allocation, that the front office has done a really good job of basically just making team friendly deals over and over again. I think the whole roster is between 15 and 19 million or on a rookie deal below that. So they've done a great job of basically every time signing a if it's a big deal, it's descending. It's getting cheaper as the years go by, which make it way more tradable, like the Vooch trade was, or the Vooch deal was. So that's been a great move for them to open up opportunities like this summer where they can grab a Fred VanVleet for 20, 25 million, add him to the rotation, and they can kind of do that without saying like we used up our only max slot on Fred VanVleet. Like instead, it's like we sent 20% of our salary allocation on Fred VanVleet, and we have all these other great talents on rookie deals, so we can kind of afford for him to be our big salary for these couple of years, and kind of wait it out and see if maybe one more guard pops as the third guard. Maybe he's the third guard eventually, where Suggs pops as the two. But that's just kind of all a bunch of different options for how they could involve Fred and going forward.
There you go. RK, what can the good folks check out from you over on the Substack this week?
Yeah, I teased it a little bit. I'm writing about the Magic's season and I'm also working with Swish Theory, getting some articles out there. I just wrote about Jaren Jackson's development, and I might end up this Magic one might end up being released on there. I'm not exactly sure. I'm also hoping to write about Aaron Gordon and his real, just beautiful fit as a defender. And I started writing it, so now that I've said it, I've now challenged myself to finish writing it and get that out there too. So we got Magic Talk, we got Aaron Gordon, Jaren Jackson. Check it on Swish Theory or my Substack, Beyond the RK. And always fun talking hoops.
There you go. Love it, man. I'm glad we were able to do this tonight. This was awesome. And we'll get you back on again soon, sir. You have yourself a great rest of your night, and I'll talk to you next week.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.